I still remembered the weight of the folder when it slid across the table. My manager pushed it toward me with 2 fingers, like it was something dirty. The room felt smaller. Everyone was already seated. No one looked surprised. That should have warned me. "This lists every mistake you've made," my manager said. 147 of them. I stared at the cover. Thick, too thick. My name was typed in bold at the top. My chest tightened and my ears rang. I opened it slowly, like it might explode. Pages and pages followed. Dates, bullet points, red highlights. Some things were real, many were tiny. Some made no sense at all. A chair scraped behind me. Someone laughed under their breath. I wanted to speak, but my mouth stayed dry. I had led 3 major projects that year. I had worked weekends. I had fixed problems no one else would touch. And now I was being handed a list like I was a failure. My manager leaned back and crossed their arms. "We'll go through it together," they said. That was when I realized this was never about fixing mistakes. It was about breaking me in front of everyone. My manager began reading the list out loud, slowly, carefully, like they enjoyed it. Missed a follow-up email by 12 minutes? Used the wrong font in a shared document? Asked a clarifying question during a meeting? Each line landed like a slap. I felt heat crawl up my neck. No one defended me. No one interrupted. A few people avoided eye contact. Others watched closely, like it was entertainment. I tried to explain one point, just one. "That delay didn't affect the deadline," I said. My manager raised his hand. "We're not debating, we're documenting." That word stuck with me. Documenting. It sounded official. Permanent, like a record that would follow me forever. As the list went on, my thoughts spiraled. How long had they been tracking me? Who helped put this together? How many times had they smiled at me while adding another mark? When the reading stopped, the room was silent. My manager closed the folder and smiled thinly. "You should reflect on this," they said. "We'll expect improvement." I nodded because I didn't trust myself to speak. Inside, something cracked. I knew this wasn't correction. It was humiliation, planned and precise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from the past year. Late nights, emergency calls, problems I solved quietly so others looked good. I remembered covering for teammates who missed deadlines. I remembered taking blame to keep projects moving. I remembered saying yes every time I should have said no. Loyalty, I realized, meant nothing there. The list wasn't about mistakes. It was about control. They watched everything I did, not to help, but to catch me slipping. Every effort I made had been twisted into proof against me. What hurt most wasn't the criticism. It was the betrayal. I had trusted that hard work mattered. I believed results would protect me. They didn't. I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I would not explode. I would not quit in anger, and I would not beg. If they wanted to document, I would document too. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know how long it would take, but I knew one thing clearly for the first time since that meeting. I was done being careless with my own value. If this was a game, I would learn the rules and play it better than them. The shift at work was quiet but sharp. Conversations stopped when I walked in. Lunch plans disappeared. People suddenly became busy when I approached. No one said anything directly. That was the worst part. I noticed small changes, fewer replies to my messages, meetings moved without telling me, decisions made without my input, then blamed on me later. It felt like I was being erased while still expected to perform. One afternoon, I sat alone in the break room, watching my phone. No notifications, no missed calls. I realized this wasn't accidental. The department had chosen a side. I started paying closer attention. Who spoke when my manager talked? Who stayed silent? Who smiled a little too fast? This isolation wasn't random. It was pressure. They wanted me unsure, off balance, ready to make real mistakes so the list would grow on its own. Instead, I grew calmer. I stopped explaining myself unless asked. I kept my head down. I delivered exactly what was required and nothing extra. Inside, I was watching everything, every glance, every comment, every email tone. They thought the folder ended the story. They didn't know it was only the opening chapter. 2 weeks later, my manager called me in again. This time, no folder, just a smile that didn't reach their eyes. "We need to talk about progress," they said. They slid a single page across the desk. It listed 3 new issues, all minor, all stretched thin. "You need to fix this pattern. If not, we'll have to consider demotion." The word hit hard, but I didn't react. I read the page slowly, like it mattered. Some of the points were false. Others were opinions, not errors. I could have argued every one. I didn't. "I understand," I said. My manager looked surprised, maybe disappointed. "Good," they replied. "I expect improvement." As I stood to leave, I felt something settle inside me. Not fear. Focus. That threat confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't about growth. It was about pushing me down until I accepted less. I walked back to my desk and opened my notebook. On the first clean page, I wrote a date and a time. Then I wrote exactly what had been said. If they were building a case, I would build one too. Quietly. Carefully. They thought I was cornered. What they didn't see was that they had finally shown their hand. That night, anger followed me home. Not loud anger. Cold anger. I replayed every moment, every look, every line from the meeting. I wanted to fire off emails. I wanted to confront them. I wanted justice immediately. I did nothing. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and breathed until the noise in my head settled. Reacting fast would feel good, but it would cost me later. So I planned. I listed every unfair standard I'd noticed. Every time someone else failed and it vanished. Every time I was blamed for something shared. Patterns appeared fast. I realized the department didn't reward accuracy. It rewarded obedience. Anyone who questioned direction became a problem. I closed the notebook and made a promise to myself. I would not give them anything new to use against me. No emotional outbursts, no careless words. From that point on, I treated work like a chessboard. Every move had a purpose. Every response was measured. They wanted a reaction. I gave them silence. And in that silence, I started building something stronger than anger. I built patience. The next step was simple, but scary. I updated my resume. I didn't tell anyone. I worked on it late at night, rewriting each role clearly and honestly. Projects I led, problems I solved, results I delivered. Seeing it all laid out reminded me who I really was. I updated my professional profile and turned on quiet job alerts. No announcements, no drama. Then I applied. Not everywhere, only places that matched my level, places that valued structure and accountability. Each application felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I wasn't trapped. I had options. At work, the pressure continued. More check-ins, more emails copied to extra people, more notes added to the file. I stayed calm, polite, precise. Inside, hope grew. Every rejection taught me something. Every interview request boosted my confidence. I prepared carefully, treating each call like an opportunity, not an escape. For the first time in months, I felt control returning. They had a folder on me. I was building a future without them. I reached out to my former manager, the one who hired me years ago. We hadn't spoken in a while, but they knew my work. We talked over a video call. I didn't complain. I explained facts. They listened quietly, then nodded. "This isn't about mistakes. It's about power," they told me. To stay calm and keep records. Dates, emails, screenshots. Facts only. Truth holds weight when emotions don't, they said. That advice stuck. They reminded me that strong performers often scare weak leaders, and that leaving on my terms would matter more than winning an argument. When the call ended, I felt lighter, not because everything was solved, but because someone saw clearly what I was facing. Back at work, I followed that guidance exactly. I documented everything. Neutral language, clean facts. I stopped hoping things would improve. I started preparing for the moment they couldn't deny reality anymore. Small wins began quietly. I noticed numbers in a report that didn't add up. Not my section, someone else's. I double-checked, then checked again. I saved a copy. In another meeting, a deadline was blamed on me, even though the delay came earlier. I pulled the timeline afterward and confirmed it. Saved. These weren't revenge moves, they were facts. I didn't share them, I didn't hint, I just stored them safely. Meanwhile, the list grew. 150, 152. Each addition felt desperate. I could sense frustration from my manager. I wasn't cracking. I wasn't defensive. I was steady. That steadiness changed something. People watched me differently. Less pity, more curiosity. They wondered why I wasn't panicking. What they didn't know was that I was no longer trying to survive there. I was preparing to leave cleanly, with proof in my hands and confidence in my step. One afternoon, I caught a clear mistake, a major one. A colleague had misreported figures that affected an entire project review. It wasn't small, it wasn't unclear. I noted the date, the file version, the meeting it was approved. Then I waited. The mistake surfaced days later. Leadership asked questions. The answer shifted. Responsibility blurred. My name never came up. I added the documentation to my growing archive. For the first time, I felt something close to satisfaction, not because someone failed, but because the truth existed, written and timed. I understood then why documentation mattered so much to them. It shaped stories, it protected narratives. Now I had my own. At my desk, I looked around. Same walls, same people, but I felt different. They thought they were tracking me. They didn't realize I had been tracking the system all along. The interview request arrived on a Tuesday morning, a top company in the industry, one I respected. I read the email twice to be sure. Then I closed it and went to the restroom to breathe. The interview went well, then the second, then the third. Each conversation felt honest. They asked about leadership, pressure, problem solving. I answered calmly, truthfully. When the offer came, I didn't celebrate. I stared at it quietly. It was more than I expected. Better role, better culture, clear respect. I saved the document and locked my screen. At work, the pressure increased. My manager added more notes, more meetings. They had no idea. For the first time since the folder hit the table, I smiled to myself. I wasn't stuck. I was choosing my exit. The department became tense. Emails grew sharper. Meetings dragged longer. My manager started calling me out more often, always calmly, always in front of others. I responded politely, briefly. The list grew again. I watched them overreach, add items that made no sense, stretch meaning, rewrite context. They were trying to bury me. Instead, they were exposing themselves. I stayed quiet, observant. Each night, I updated my notes, organized files, backed them up. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. They thought control meant pressure. I knew control meant timing. 4 weeks passed. I had the signed offer saved safely. I didn't resign. I wanted them comfortable, confident. They believed their strategy worked, that I was worn down, afraid. I watched as they tightened rules, monitored everything, missed their own errors. The more pressure they applied, the clearer the imbalance became. HR reached out once. Casual questions. I answered simply. I waited. I played my role carefully. I apologized for small things, took notes, asked for clarity. My manager relaxed, smiled more, spoke louder. They thought they had won. I let them believe it. Inside, I cataloged every interaction, every exaggeration, every fabricated error. The longer they stretched the tension, the stronger my position became. I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing. And I knew the moment would come when patience and preparation would pay off. My archive was complete. Emails, logs, reports, timelines. Not opinions, proof. I knew exactly when, where, and how things had gone wrong. I had context for every accusation, every mistake. I slept well. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Not just calm, but in control. I had a plan, and that plan wasn't about retaliation or drama. It was about timing, leverage, and leaving on my own terms. Quiet questions began reaching HR. Neutral ones, process, accuracy, consistency. I stayed calm, answered politely, provided facts. Nothing explosive, just enough to plant doubt without seeming confrontational. The air shifted. The department didn't notice it yet, but subtle cracks were forming. Colleagues glanced at each other during meetings, frowning slightly when mistakes appeared. I watched from my desk, pen in hand, making notes. Timing mattered. I couldn't rush. I didn't want drama. I wanted undeniable truth to speak for itself. Each interaction, each small misstep by my manager became a data point. They believed their overconfidence was untouchable. They didn't see it coming. I realized patience had become my strongest weapon. Every error they claimed, every sneer, every added bullet point to their growing file, it was all feeding my plan. By nightfall, I felt a calm satisfaction. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't the subject of humiliation anymore. I was collecting the proof to control the narrative. The folder had started it, but now I was writing the final chapters. My manager began bragging openly about managing performance in meetings. I documented every word, tone, context, audience. Every boast of authority became evidence of arrogance, of overreach. They felt untouchable, proud, superior, certain the department was aligned behind them. They weren't. The whispers began, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. Colleagues questioned small inconsistencies. Small mistakes others had ignored now drew attention. HR noticed patterns. I watched, satisfied, but still quiet. Every boast my manager made, every statement of control, only reinforced my case. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I wasn't attacking. I was letting evidence do the work. By documenting everything, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was creating a narrative that no one could dispute. This was no longer about mistakes. It was about integrity, fairness, and accountability. And I had them all recorded. HR finally asked for clarification, neutral, procedural questions. The infamous folder came under review. Some items vanished, others were questioned. My manager's defensiveness grew, visible in slight hand gestures, tightened jaw, and a faint flush. They tried to spin it as process, as diligence, but the evidence didn't lie. I stayed silent, observing, recording. Each conversation, each review became more leverage. The manager's carefully constructed narrative began to unravel in real time. By the end of the day, I knew the tide had turned. I wasn't just surviving the scrutiny anymore. I was controlling it. I organized all the documentation into a clean narrative. No emotion, no embellishment, just facts, dates, emails, reports, screenshots, comparisons. I laid out the department's errors, omissions, and contradictions in chronological order. The folder that had once humiliated me was now a blueprint, not of failure, but of truth. I reviewed everything one last time. I was ready to show the evidence, ready to step forward with confidence, ready to reclaim the narrative. No shouting, no dramatics, just undeniable truth. During a project review meeting, I spoke calmly, asking precise questions. I shared small, factual discrepancies, then slightly larger ones. Eyes shifted. Colleagues whispered quietly. Tension grew. The manager tried to deflect, to maintain control, but facts hung in the air, clear, unarguable. Silence followed each revelation. Hesitation replaced certainty. Confidence faltered. I remained calm, measured, observant. The room felt different. People started questioning decisions that had been unquestioned for months. The reveal had begun, and I was only warming up. I requested a one-on-one with my manager. Calmly, I closed the door behind me. On the desk, I placed the job offer from the competitor I had worked months to secure. My manager froze. Eyes widened, fingers twitched slightly over the keyboard. "I wanted you to see this," I said evenly. No gloating, no smirk. The silence stretched. Then came a small, incredulous chuckle. I don't understand," they said. "You will," I replied. "I've documented everything. Every claim, every fabricated mistake, every real error." The words sank in. I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't threatening. I was simply stating facts. The manager leaned back, stunned. The power shift was clear. The room that had once been theirs was now shared by truth. I left them to process it. Word spread fast. Colleagues whispered. Some glanced at me with subtle admiration. Confidence changed sides in the department. My manager's attempts at intimidation were ineffective. I remained composed, polite, precise, unshakable. The manager tried to assert control, but each attempt was deflected by the evidence I had quietly collected. The office energy shifted. Respect replaced fear. I felt it in the subtle nods, the hushed discussions, the way meetings now included me without hesitation. I realized that patience, documentation, and strategy were more powerful than anger or confrontation. Standing at the threshold of the department, I delivered my final line with calm authority. I guess the 147 mistakes didn't matter to the company that truly values me. Heads turned, eyes widened, whispers spread. I walked out steadily, no hesitation, no backward glance. The manager was left flustered, red-faced, powerless. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not revenge. Justice had arrived through preparation and composure. Starting my new role, the difference was stark. Clear goals, respectful leadership, a culture that valued facts and accountability. The old department unraveled quietly. My manager's credibility faltered. HR and senior leadership adjusted their oversight. I thrived. Projects moved smoothly, teams communicated openly, mistakes were addressed without humiliation. I realized the real victory wasn't leaving, it was creating an environment where integrity mattered. Looking back, I felt proud. I had stayed calm, prepared carefully, and collected evidence methodically. I left on my terms, confident and respected. The folder that had once humiliated me became a testament to patience and strategy. I didn't need to humiliate anyone. I didn't need drama. I simply showed my value, quietly but unmistakably. And that was the real victory.